Hi, everybody. Welcome to Special Education Thursday. We are very excited to join back up with our fall schedule after taking the month off in August. As a reminder, we do Special Education Thursdays for Advocates for Justice in Education, which is the parent training and information center for the District of Columbia when it comes to special education and disability issues. We always try to take a bite-sized piece of special education and talk about it with one of our local experts. And these are always available to parents at any time. We have been doing these for almost a year and a half, or more than a year and a half now. And we have a terrific library of Special Education Thursday recordings that you can listen to on the phone or go online, watch the PowerPoint as well. And they're really great to give you a little bite piece from what educational therapist to special education law. We're going to get into kind of a detailed, maybe a little bit more legalese topic today. We're going to talk about when you need a second opinion in special education evaluations and learning about what independent education evaluations are. And our guest today is Stcey Eunnae and she's a staff at AJE. I always like to begin, Stacey, if you could just tell everybody a little bit about what you do at AJE and how you got involved working in special education in DC.
Sure. So right now I'm a senior staff attorney at Advocates for Justice in Education, and I graduated from law school 5 years ago, and AJE was my first job. I started as a staff attorney, and I practiced here for about 2 years representing families in special education and school discipline matters, and then I spent 2 years at UDC's Juvenile and Special Education Law Clinic. So I've been practicing in Virginia and DC, education law basically for about the past 5 years, and I recently returned to AJE this spring.
So let's get started because I think it's a pretty meaty topic. Before I've got your slide up about IEEs regulations, which is federal law in with Disabilities Act. But let me just start with a really easy. What are IEEs? What are independent educational evaluations?
So an independent educational evaluation is basically any sort of private testing in order to assess whether your child has an educational disability, how they're performing in school, and then to get an idea in different areas as to what would help program educationally for a child to meet their individual needs.
Okay, so these are done specifically for kids in special education with a disability. Are they done all the time? I mean, as everybody knows, I always talk about my kids on these, and I have 2 kids with autism who've gone through DC public schools and charter schools. I've never done an IEE, so is that uncommon? When do you use one, I guess I would say?
It's definitely not uncommon, and it's one of my favorite rights in the IDEA. Because I think it's got really strong protections for parents. I think one of the reasons it's not commonly done is because it's expensive for school districts, and so they don't really advertise. Many, I find, don't advertise the right to an IEE, but it's a really strong protection, especially for parents who don't have enough money to afford $1,000 evaluations on the private market or through their insurance.
So let's say you're in an IEP meeting and the school does an evaluation. Do you ask for an IEE when you don't like the school's evaluation, or would you ask for an IEE first? Like, how does it work?
So there's a couple of points in the special education process when I would think about asking for an IEE. The first would be when you're initially evaluating your child to think, does my child need an IEP? The first step is either that you would bring in private testing from a doctor, or you would ask the school, hey, can you support me in evaluating whether my child qualifies for an IEP? And then your child will have a psychoeducational evaluation, maybe a speech-language test, maybe a test in occupational therapy. And then at that point, the team will meet and make a decision. So if the conclusion of the report from the school comes back and you disagree with it as a parent, where it says, no, my child doesn't qualify for an IEP, or maybe it says he has ADHD, but you think it's a learning disability, At that point in the meeting or after the meeting, you can simply say, I disagree with the school's evaluation, and I'd like to request that the school pay for me to get my own second opinion through an IEE.
So basically, it's you want to bring it up and take advantage of it when you disagree with what the school system does on their evaluation first. So the first step would be, like, I want to make sure parents don't think, oh, I can go and get an independent educational evaluation first. You want to go through the process of having the school do the evaluation first, right?
Yeah, you can always get your own evaluation, but if you want the school district to pay for it, they get the first bite of the apple.
Okay.
So they get to have the first go at testing, and your right to an independent evaluation only gets triggered if you disagree with theirs. And if there was, and then the school district basically has two choices, and all a parent has to do is say, I agree with this evaluation you did. The parent doesn't even have to give a reason to the school district, and it triggers a responsibility in the school district to respond in one of two ways. Either they need to give you the funding in order to authorize you to go get a private market independent evaluation from whoever you choose that's qualified, or they initiate a due process complaint where they have the burden of proof of showing their evaluation is so great that they don't need to pay for you to have one. But it's the one right in the IDEA that is where the burden's put on the school district to have to prove that their evaluation's right.
Gotcha. And then let's talk about how it works in DC. So we all know that we've got public charter schools that are their own local education agency, and then we have our big local education agency, which is DCPS. So does it work the same way within a charter or a DCPS asking for an IEE, or is there anything unique to DC that parents should know about?
So it works the same way in charter schools and in DCPS. There are a few minor differences, but in terms of how a parent would exercise that right, it's fundamentally the same. So whether it's at that initial evaluation stage, parent disagrees, or it comes up later when a student's had an IEP and then it's time to reassess them, that reassessment comes back and the parent disagrees, they can ask for an evaluation. I typically do it when I represent parents with them at an IEP meeting, and then I will follow up in writing with an email just reminding them that I disagreed with the evaluation. The one particular point of DC that's helpful to know is that even though it's an IEP decision, the school district often uses someone in the central office to actually issue the letter. So parents should not expect to receive the funding letter at the meeting. It typically comes later in a charter school from the attorney or from the special ed coordinator or administrator. And in DCPS, they have a portion of the central office that's responsible for issuing them. So I provided a sample at the end of the PowerPoint that is simply a letter, what a letter from DCPS looks like when they have issued funding saying that you can go get your own independent evaluation.
And then, so we've got that up, and that's for DCPS. If a parent's working with a charter, they would get some kind of similar letter from the charter school.
Yep, I've seen it look like literally just letterhead that says this authorizes you to go get an independent evaluation, and then they'll put a rate, an hourly rate, and then a maximum cost. And they might have some guidelines as to what a qualified provider means so that you can pick somebody who has the right background in order to do the testing. And then parents don't have to worry about billing. All billing is done between the provider and the school. So you're basically, as a parent, just giving the person that you choose to do the evaluation or the company a copy of the letter, and it's like a promise from the school system to pay. And they handle all of that on the back end.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming this sample letter that you gave doesn't have any designated information. So the letter you would have would probably say, dear parent, your child, blah, 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 so that you've got that, right? It would be more specific to the family?
Yeah, so the letter, the bottom part of the letter definitely mentions specifics about the child's name, and then it refers to DCPS's parent guide, which I've provided a sample of, and we can send a link out after the webinar. This is helpful, I think, for both parents with children in charter schools or in DCPS. But I find that you only even get to this parent guide or when you've actually already asked for your IEE. So I rarely see parents getting this in advance to learn about their rights. It's really what DCPS gives once you've already known and exercised that right by saying, hey, I want an IEE.
Right. Tell me about, I wanted to, before we get off the letter, you've got some numbers here, and we shared earlier that there's a rate change. So it's recently changed by, is it DCPS or by the state education agency, IEEs?
So the general principle is that the parent should have the right to go get an independent evaluation for their child on the private market. But schools are allowed to set reasonable caps so that they don't end up paying, a lot of money for evaluations that can be obtained much more reasonably. So the two places in DC where you can find rates is OSSI has published regulations in the DC municipal regulations establishing maximum costs. That hadn't changed for almost a decade, and they were extremely, extremely low. For example, I believe OSSI's rate for a psychological evaluation, which is the base testing that needs to be done in order to assess a child's intelligence in terms of cognitive ability, where their reading level is at, and their rate for that was about $1,300 or $1,600. On the private market, we've found that $3,000 to $3,500 is more in line with practice standards in DC, Maryland, Virginia. So that was a huge problem because parents were exercising this right but still not getting enough money, so they had to supplement it with their own funds. And that's not what the law imagined that's not what Congress intended when they wrote in this provision. So in DCPS, they just recently this summer, after, again, more than a decade, I believe, they just issued new rates, and now DCPS says that they will pay up to $2,500 for a psychological, but parents should always remember that if they have testing that's going to be more, and they can show and argue that their child needs that testing, that they can still work with DCPS or their charter school to get the school to authorize more money by simply illustrating their child needs the test and the person that they've provided charges more and has a reason for that.
Okay, so the new rates are for both charters and DCPS, but the thing for parents to know is they definitely have some bargaining or negotiating opportunities that they can go back to the school and say, hey, the fee is, $3,000 and you're giving me a maximum total of $2,500, and they could get the school to, pay for the full, right?
Right. So I was tempted to not even include the price in the letter because I don't want parents to think that they're limited to the guidelines or the prices that are listed in OSSI's rates or in DCPS's guidebook. But to be clear, that DCPS parent guide with the new rates will only apply to DCPS, and parents should think of it more like policy guidelines. The OSSI rates are still as low as they were before, and they're still published in the regulations, so parents should watch out for schools still trying to authorize psychological evaluations at $1,600. And just remember that they can come back and be like, hey, that's not what this costs, by providing an invoice from the evaluator that they want their child to be tested by.
So let me ask you this: how often can you request an IE, or is there going too far and getting too many?
That's a great question. So the IDEA, the special education law, says that you can only get one independent educational evaluation for a school district's evaluation. But you are entitled to an independent evaluation in all areas of suspected disability. So, for example, say the school district does a psychological evaluation during a child's triennial review. So every 3 years when they're reevaluating the child to see how they're progressing. And the parent has suspicions that maybe the child needs to be tested in social skills or for autism. If the school psychologist doesn't assess social skills whatsoever, and that's maybe the fundamental reason why the parent wants another opinion, they can ask for a comprehensive psychological that includes testing in social skills and autism, even if the school district didn't do it before. So just to say that kind of simpler, you can get a IEE every time you disagree with any testing the school does, but it only comes once. You can't disagree with that same testing again and get a third opinion, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we definitely want parents to know, that this is a really valuable tool. But like anything in a long process of, if you have a student with a disability, you're likely going to have an IEP for their entire education time. And you want to make sure that you are, requesting the IE when you really need it, and working with the team, with the IEP team on making decisions. So let's talk a little bit. I think we've got the IE and the basics. You gave me 2 links that we did have up on the PowerPoint right now. The 2018 DCPS Parent Guide. Now, this is only for DCPS students, but tell us a little bit about, is there anything in particular you like parents to know that's in this guide, or take a look at? So, when those come out and they're 50 pages long, sometimes parents aren't going to sit and read them all.
Absolutely. So the reason that I like to provide this guide to all parents, whether they're at DCPS or charter schools, is again because I don't find these guides are distributed in advance, because, like I said, this can be an expensive right. But one of the things the parent guide will have that everybody can use is a list, and it's not exhaustive, but a list of the types of testing that you might want to consider getting for your child. For example, everything from audiology to explaining what a comprehensive psychological evaluation is, or talking about assistive technology and how there's testing where you can actually see if there's new technology that can benefit your child in school. So it's really helpful for explaining what the kind of tests are available. The other thing in the parent guide is DCPS is required, all school districts are required to provide information to parents about where they can get testing at the price offered. That's another point where you can negotiate price. If a parent can't find an evaluator to do the evaluation for the price that the school offered, then they can go to the school and they have a right for the school to say, hey, here are some places you can go get it. It can't be, what makes it independent is it's not someone hired by the school. That provider works for the parent, meaning when they're getting the testing done in the report, that report should be sent to the parent, and then the parent can distribute that to the school.
Great. So I've kind of flipped through some of the highlights that you put on there. And then you've also got the link for OSCE's maximum approve rates. Now, you did state these have not changed in about 10 years. And what rights do parents have if, a charter school is saying, well, these are the OSCE rates and there's nothing we can do about it?
Right. So part of the reason that I included that up there is because I think that parents are likely to have this sent to them as a way of saying, hey, this is the maximum rate. But I want parents to remember that that's not true. And what the real right is something where you can actually go out on the private market and get a reasonable, independent opinion from a qualified person. So if the school district is not making it accessible for you to do that, that is what the law is actually giving you the right to. So forget the policy and the guidelines. If you can't access a reasonable provider at that price, or there's some other obstacle in the way or delay, that's why I start with the regulations as written. There are really strong protections in plain language that I think that parents can write in an email and remind schools, hey, you have 2 options. You need to provide it to me without unnecessary delay in a way I can actually get it, or you need to initiate a due process hearing to prove to a hearing officer that your evaluation is so comprehensive that I don't need an independent opinion.
Terrific. Well, I think, is there any last bit of advice you want to give to parents before we close off, or anything that you'd, feel like you want to share?
I will say that I think sometimes it can be challenging. I've guided a lot of parents through the process of asking for an independent educational evaluation, and I would say that that might even be like your school special education coordinator or teachers. They're actually not aware of this, right? So I try to take a approach of firm but educating when I communicate with schools and put everything in writing with the expectation that that person you're communicating with at the school may very well have to forward that up to the admin until the school starts recognizing that this is a right and parents start using it. So if you have any problems doing it, you can always call AJE for assistance. So again, I've provided assistance just by giving parents the language and support so they can do the request on their own and follow up and make sure they get it. Or I have at times intervened directly for the parent when the school is just refusing to enforce this right.
Terrific. And I've got on the PowerPoint the slide with the phone number and email and website of AJE, and also their Mary Center location. So if there's any questions at the end of this, if you're listening as a parent or professional, please reach out to AJE. We will have the link to this recording on the AJE website by tomorrow, and we hope that you will come on out to AJE's or come and visit AJE's website. Just click trainings and then archived webinars, and you can see our list of about 30 or 40 archived webinars on Special Education Thursday and bite-sized pieces of special ed. So thanks so much, Stcey. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.